President, the Senate will vote later today to confirm Linda McMahon to be Secretary of Education. Mrs. McMahon is an accomplished businesswoman and public servant. She's known for her role in building World Wrestling Entertainment, better known as WWE, from a small operation to a large and thriving enterprise. And she has used her success to give back and make a positive impact. Mrs. McMahon led efforts to promote reading and civic engagement through WWE. She spent 16 years on the Board of Trustees for Sacred Heart University in her home state of Connecticut. She served on the Connecticut Board of Education. And in his first term, President Trump tapped Linda McMahon to lead the Small Business Administration, where she was known for listening to small businesses to make the SBA a more effective agency. She will bring valuable experience, an incredible work ethic, and a passion for education to her new role leading the Department of Education. And, Mr. President, she has a big task ahead of her. Let's acknowledge that. In January, the nation's report card revealed that American students are still struggling to make up ground lost during the pandemic. Reading scores among 4th and 8th graders declined again after falling in 2022 and 2019. 1/3 of 8th graders are reading below a basic level, the highest proportion ever recorded. Math scores showed modest improvement, but they still remain below pre-pandemic levels. And there's a widening gap in student performance. Mr. President, this should concern all of us. As a son of 2 public school educators and father of 2 daughters who went to public schools, I know this problem isn't going to be fixed by Washington bureaucrats. It's going to be fixed by good teachers, administrators, school boards, and parents, the people who are closest to the students and most invested in their success. Mr. President, the federal government provides less than 10% of funding for schools in this country. The other 90% of funding, money that keeps the lights on, pays teachers, and buys new textbooks, well, that comes from state and local governments and from private sources. But while the federal government provides a small percentage of education funding, it's responsible for an outsized amount of the bureaucracy and mandates in education. And more often than not, it's these policies that are holding back school districts from innovating and ultimately improving the education that they provide. Mr. President, I'm glad that Mrs. McMahon recognizes that education is not one size fits all. States have different needs. School districts and individual schools have different needs. And every student has his or her own needs and aspirations. So I'm glad that Mrs. McMahon plans to work in a way that empowers those closest to the student, because they are in the best position to do what's right for that student. When I met with Mrs. McMahon, we had a long conversation about South Dakota's unique education needs, including our tribal schools. And I look forward to working with Linda McMahon to limit bureaucracy, empower state and local governments, and let good teachers do what they're best at and what they love to do, and that's to help students succeed.